Hello again, everyone, and thanks so much for joining us for this Friday's edition of Alaska Weather on the last day of April 2021. I'm Dave Percy, a meteorologist with the National Weather Service, and I'll be hosting today's show. Up first, we've got let me get this rolling here. We've got the hazardous weather graphic, and there are no watches, warnings, or advisories out anywhere in the state for the probably through the weekend and the first of next week. No big storms expected anywhere from the Aleutians of Bering Sea in across the interior or even up along the Arctic coast. As you can see, nowhere is illuminated. Satellite imagery showing a lot of clear skies. Bristol Bay across Kodiak Island into the western Gulf of Alaska, Kenai Peninsula clearing out. System moving off to the east that brought the light rain and snow to south central Alaska, Copper River Basin, on up into the east central interior today. Water equivalent 1 to 2/10 of an inch fell in the last 12 hours, say up over the Tanana Valley and over toward the 40-mile country. Copper River Basin had quarter of an inch of rainfall at Gulcano, while Paxson picked up about, roughly 1/1500ths of an inch of precipitation in the last 12 hours. So nothing terribly heavy at all precipitation-wise or wind-wise. Winds became a little gusty. Resurrection Bay, Seward seeing gusts 35 miles an hour at times, 35 miles an hour today with clear skies and temperatures pushing up into the lower 50s there over the Kenai Peninsula. And a little cooler back to the west and northwest with temperatures in the teens, still in the teens at mid-afternoon with, it was 17 degrees or 16 at Kotzebue this afternoon, at mid-afternoon. Milder, though, over the eastern interior into the 30s and lower 40s and lower 50s over the Kenai Peninsula. Clouds and showers were the rule across the Panhandle today, with a weak system off to the southwest, west of the Queen Charlottes. And then clouds pretty well entrenched over the Bering Sea, as well as just about all the Aleutians. Looks like a few breaks, though, in and around Unalaska and maybe the western Alaska Peninsula. Variably cloudy for the Pribilofs. And on the chart today, areas, there's that system, very weak, trailing edge of that front, really not much weather with it at all. Just kind of a cooler air mass behind that with the offshore flow, that clearing the skies out over the Gulf of Alaska, Kodiak Island, and behind it over the Cook Inlet, Kenai Peninsula areas. Otherwise, Seward Peninsula, a little bit of light snow, again, very light amounts up there over the northern interior areas, and clouds over the Bering Sea, and a few showers in over the central eastern Aleutians, mostly west of Unalaska Island there with that weak system. And again, for tonight, still some rain and snow showers linger over the entire stretch of the southeast coast, mostly cloudy skies. Be kind of hit and miss. Not everywhere will see precipitation, but other areas will, and whatever falls will be light. And winds will also be light over the area there. High pressure over the interior, light winds, and anywhere from partly cloudy to mostly clear skies from the northern valleys there, south of the Brooks Range, all the way to the Kenai Peninsula. Call it partly and mostly cloudy, or mostly cloudy for Kodiak Island, but winds will be light and it'll be dry. Same thing for Bristol Bay. Look for an increase in the clouds tonight from what you had today there, but not too bad. And northern Bering Sea, snow showers west of St. Lawrence Island, and rain and snow south of the Pribilofs. Periods of rain from Matka Island to the eastern Aleutians, Alaska Peninsula. And again, winds on the light side, a little breezy in the central Aleutians, but 20-25 miles an hour, that's about it. And light snow possible across the Arctic coast with some fog and snow showers into the eastern Brooks Range. For tomorrow, snow showers linger over the eastern North Slope, Kaktovik, Barter Island, down in maybe to Arctic Village. but whatever does fall will be quite light. Weak high pressure to the west there over the western Brooks Range, mostly clear over the central interior, down into Cook Inlet again, maybe a few more clouds into Prince William Sound possibly, and chance of rain southwest Kodiak Island later in the day tomorrow, and periods of light rain continue, especially the south side of the Alaska Peninsula. And chance of rain and snow showers of the permafrost close enough to that trough axis there, just to your southeast, to keep it cloudy with a chance of little moisture. And eastern Aleutians look unsettled, and just isolated showers for Atka, and some clearing there for the area from Adak out to Shemya. And showers on the decrease now for the Panhandle. That's mostly early in the day. You'll be seeing improvement throughout the day, with maybe even ending by late afternoon. And then break overnight Saturday night, and then the chances of moisture increase again over the Panhandle in the afternoon as that front off to your southwest brings a chance of rain right up to the coastline. So it'll be best weather early in the day, or the clearest weather. Best chance of sun will be earlier on, and a little bit better chance of rain along the coast in the afternoon. Otherwise, scattered rain and snow showers along the North Gulf Coast, possibly in the Copper River Basin, Prince William Sound, maybe the Talkeetnas, Kenai Peninsula, as well as Bristol Bay, Yukon-Kuskokwim Delta areas, chance of showers, and pretty good low there over the eastern Bering Sea. So we're looking at small craft advisory winds, actually gale force northerlies for St. Matthew Island, the northern Bering Sea from St. Lawrence Island, and then small craft advisories, 25 to 30 knot winds from Atka to the eastern Aleutians, but light winds and clearing skies there over the western and central Aleutian areas, as well as, again, the northern interior, maybe some clouds, light northwest breeze there for the eastern Arctic coast. Actually light winds up there through the weekend, so variably cloudy along the coastline, becoming clear in toward the Brooks Range area. Looking at the lows tonight, in the 30s to lower 40s for the Panhandle, 20s and lower 30s along the coastal areas, lower 20s to Sitna Valley, Copper River Basin, lower to mid 20s, 25 to 30 Bristol Bay, upper 30s for Kodiak Island, and looks like northern Kuskokwim Valley in the upper teens, and teens to lower 20s over the central interior, actually kind of contrasting from lower to mid 20s toward the eastern border to lower to mid teens toward the Seward Peninsula, and single numbers in teens for the Arctic coast and North Slope. Again, dropping below 10 degrees like this morning over the inland areas of the Seward Peninsula, but around 20 for St. Lawrence Island. And in the lower to mid 20s for the lower Yukon and Kuskokwim River Valley areas, mid 20s out along the coast, upper 20s for the Pribilofs, mid 30s for the Aleutians, upper 30s for the Fox Islands. Highs for tomorrow, 40s to lower 50s across much of southern Alaska, as well as the Panhandle, upper 40s to mid 50s. And the interior in the 40s, Brooks Range, 20s to lower 30s, North Slope, 20s to lower 30s, and then 20s for the Arctic coast, upper 20s St. Lawrence Island. And along the southwest coast, actually Bristol Bay, 40s to maybe lower 50s there. And cooler, though, for the Yukon Delta area, Nunivak Island, in the mid-30s, but inland areas pushing into the 40s, lower 40s for the Aleutians, upper 30s the Pribilofs, and mid-40s for the Alaska Peninsula. Lows the following morning, for Sunday morning, 20s to 25 to 35 for southern Alaska, and upper 30s, lower 40s for the Panhandle, near 40 Kodiak Island. Teens and 20s, central interior, single numbers on the North Slope and the Arctic coast into the Brooks Range, and teens for the Seward Peninsula, lower 20s for Nome, though, as well as St. Lawrence Island, Savunga, and Gamble. And mostly in the lower to mid-30s for the southwest coast, near 30 for the Pribilofs, Aleutians, mid-30s or so, and near 40 for the lows for the Alaska Peninsula. Highs in the 50s, southern Alaska on Sunday afternoon, and 50 to 55 for the Panhandle, 45 for Kodiak Island, and in the mid-50s for the Tanana Valley around Fairbanks, as well as the upper Yukon.
And now, aviation weather around Alaska.
Moving on to our first line weather graphic here for Saturday morning. IFR, Central Eastern Arctic Coast, Eastern North Slope there with Western Central Brooks Range, marginal VFR, some of that into the northwest interior, Noatak Valley, Shishmaref down to Wales, say Kotzebue Sound, and then VFR, the entire stretch of the Yukon River right out to the Delta and the coastline, and off the coast, Nunivak Island VFR, St. Lawrence Island marginal, Pribilofs marginal, IFR west of Adak or near Adak, westward to Chimney-at-2, and VFR, Bristol Bay, Alaska Peninsula, Kodiak Island, Kenai Peninsula, marginal VFR. We've got up into Valdez and eastern Prince William Sound, eastern Copper River Basin, and maybe even in toward the Northway Toke to just south of Eagle. Could be a little marginal to start the day. Northern half of the Panhandle, marginal VFR, southern half IFR. And then that becomes, let's see, that moves to VFR for the afternoon for the entire southeast coast. In fact, most of interior Alaska now, VFR, except for the eastern Brooks Range, with IFR, central eastern Arctic coast, and VFR for the Seward Peninsula, and marginal VFR in most of the Bering Sea, some areas of IFR, especially along and south of the eastern Aleutians Alaska Peninsula, and up to Sitkinak and the Trinity Islands there, marginal VFR up the east side of Kodiak Island. And moving on to the morning for Sunday, IFR now, Pribilofs and extending up across Nunivak Island to Cape Newenham, marginal VFR along the coast though, with some marginal VFR a little more extensive in over the southwest mountains there, Togiak Bay, maybe to Dillingham, and Alaska Peninsula, marginal or IFR there from Sandpoint all the way to and including all of Unalaska Island, and then marginal VFR from Unmak Island to Kiska, Shemiana to IFR, and VFR for the Panhandle, marginal VFR possibly into Resurrection Bay and into Prince William Sound, otherwise not too bad. And for the afternoon, that IFR stays put there for the central eastern Arctic coast, so Sunday IFR in that area, marginal to the west, VFR interior Alaska, still chances of some marginal VFR, Prince William Sound, and say possibly Portage there into Whittier and down towards Seward, but VFR hopefully for Homer on northward into the interior, marginal VFR, Yukon-Kuskokwim Delta down to Togiak Bay and most of Bristol Bay, with IFR along the Yukon Delta coast, Nunivak Island, Pribilof, St. Lawrence Island, as well as the western Aleutians IFR, Kodiak Island IFR up to the Barrens into Kamishak Bay, and Panhandle stays VFR. For the passes tomorrow, Anatuvik starting out marginal, becoming VFR probably by afternoon. Same forecast for Adigan, marginal to VFR. Lake Clark and Merrill, VFR flying for those passes, and we've got rainy at VFR, VFR for windy. Isabel, VFR, looking good from Intasta. Tanita, good VFR either approach and portage. Ceilings visibility is possibly unlimited. And for Chilkoot and White, starting out marginal in the morning, and then at some point in the day, it'll become VFR. And then for the freezing levels, at the surface, down back near the North Gulf Coast for tomorrow morning, and the southwest coast, Togiak Bay, right over the Pribilofs, 2,000 feet, 2,000 to 4,000 feet for the Fox Islands, 2,000 feet southern Panhandle. Icing, not much, just a risk of slight chance of some light icing possible or mixed there over the Panhandle. And same thing, Kodiak Island, mostly light possibly, in the Alaska Peninsula to the Fox Islands. Jet stream showing low pressure, Arctic, or the North Slope there, and we've got west-southwest flow, not too strong, generally under 65 knots there, and moving on to the 9,000 foot wind flow, not too strong at this elevation either, low pressure over the Bering Sea, so north winds turn northwest, about 40 knots coming into the west central Aleutians, 25 knots central Aleutians, maybe 20 knots there off the southern Panhandle, otherwise light winds everywhere else, 3,000 feet. A little breezy there around that Bering Sea low, northerlies 30-35 knots there on the west side of that system, between the low and the high off southwest of Shemya there, and then southeast winds 20 to 30 knots across the Alaska Peninsula, diminishing as you get toward Nunivak Island. And turbulence, pretty smooth for most of interior Alaska from the Arctic coast, Gulf of Alaska, maybe some light to isolated moderate chop there for the Alaska Peninsula, and maybe Nikolsky westward to Atka and Adak. And after the break, I'll be back with a look at the marine forecasts.
Technology. It's the rhythm of our everyday life. We're more dependent on satellite and communication systems than at any other time in history. Disruptions can affect our economy and even our safety. To prepare for the effects of such events and minimize impacts, we need to look outside our atmosphere, some 93 million miles away, at a star we call the Sun. It's our main energy source. It warms the Earth and grows our food. While the Sun and the space between may seem pleasant from our perspective, it's anything but peaceful. At its surface exists a chaotic state of eruptions and radiation. And unlike Vegas, what happens at the Sun doesn't stay at the Sun.
Space weather is essentially emissions from the Sun, radiation, magnetic field that erupts from the solar surface, pumped out into space, sometimes right towards Earth. When it impacts the Earth, it impacts our technology. That's what we call space weather.
These solar events and their effects at Earth can disrupt systems we take for granted. From causing blackouts to the power grid, to delaying offshore drilling operations due to inaccurate GPS data. Interference with communication systems can force air traffic to reroute and impact rescue response and coordination. Outside our atmosphere, solar radiation can harm astronauts and the systems they depend on. The good news is that these eruptions can be detected early. Forecasters at the NOAA Space Weather Prediction Center in Boulder, Colorado, have their eyes on the Sun at all times.
The Space Weather Prediction Center is part of the National Weather Service and is very much like a normal weather forecast office. We're here 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. We're looking at data, we're looking at imagery, we're looking at model outputs. As conditions develop, we put out alerts, warnings, and watches of imminent activity to our customers so they can take action.
In many ways, forecasting space weather is a lot like forecasting hurricanes. Those who rely on space weather forecasts, like electric power grid managers, are informed early on and can begin taking protective action.
When we see an eruption on the Sun, space weather forecasters will issue a watch. This is much like a hurricane watch. When a hurricane sits offshore of Miami, for example, perhaps 48 hours out, we too can see way in advance that something may be coming towards the Earth.
As the storm moves toward us, it hits a monitoring spacecraft orbiting 1 million miles away from Earth.
It's kind of our buoy sitting out there offshore, and that hurricane about 45 minutes before it makes landfall, we'll get the measurements from the buoy. That's what this spacecraft does for us. That big eruption that left the Sun hits the spacecraft. Now we've got the measurements of exactly what's going to impact us here on Earth, and we issue the warnings to give the power grid a heads up that the storm is now imminent. An interesting element to this whole process is that when the forecasters issue the alert, the power grid receives the alert, takes the necessary actions to protect the grid, and the average citizen never knows anything ever happened.
The number of customers who rely on space weather information continues to grow. As our reliance on technology increases, so will our need for constant monitoring of the Sun.
Space weather affects technologies. As conditions develop, we put out alerts, warnings, and watches to our customers so they can take action.
GPS has changed society. Most people don't realize how remarkable and how many different applications there are.
The GPS has become an integral part, not just of our daily lives as far as cell phones and guidance for our cars and mapping, but the whole system in agriculture is really relying heavily on high accuracy GPS.
So they're using GPS to plant those seeds with centimeter accuracy. And then they can come behind it and irrigate and fertilize right where that seed is with that 1 centimeter accuracy.
The GPS creates a line for the operator that he can steer along, or you go to another level and the operator doesn't steer anymore and the tractor has an automatic steering system on it, much like a cruise control on a car, except for when I push the button, it doesn't drive a set speed. When I push a button, it stays on a predefined line.
You don't even need lights. You can do it at nighttime. You program your GPS and it's driving that tractor for you. So it's huge, and it's changing the way that the farmers farm the fields.
6 or 7 days out.
There's an interest in GPS applications from space weather side because when the sun is eruptive, it causes GPS to falter, and in some cases it doesn't work at all.
Productivity may suffer to a certain degree in that there's no way that I as a human being can steer as good 8 hours a day as a GPS system's going to do. It's going to be the same all day long. Some of the other application technologies, those are going to be gone. We're not going to have the ability to do good section control on sprayers and planters and fertilizer applicators without GPS.
We see a huge growing customer base in so many different industries, so many different sectors now relying on GPS and high precision GPS. They're all big customers for us.
And now, marine weather around Alaska.
Welcome back. Today's sea ice analysis continuing to thin out there along the southwest coast, Yukon-Kuskokwim Delta coast. Still some shore fast right along the coastline in most areas there. Otherwise, not a lot of change. Bristol Bay just about ice-free now, as well as northern Cook Inlet. And just a slow thaw in the sea ice conditions over the next week or so expected out there. Moving on to the coastal water forecasts, we've got light winds on the north coast, west-southwest 10 knots, seas 6 to 7 feet, west 15 knots with 7-foot seas on the south coast. Inside waters, southeast 5 to 10 knots with seas 2 feet or less. And then for Sunday, southeast winds still light in the inside waters, basically from the southeast or variable to southeast, 5 to 10 knots, seas 2 to 3 feet or less. And for the south coast, south winds 20 knots, central coast southeast 25 knots or small craft advisories, and the north coast east to 20. Prince William Sound, light east winds tomorrow. Northern Cook Inlet, light northeast breezes, pick up to about 15 knots south of the Forelands. Kamishak Bay, east winds 20 knots. Barren Island, southeast to 15. And the North Gulf Coast, east-southeast 15 knots, east 4 to 5 feet. And pick up the winds on Sunday. Small craft advisories now for the North Gulf Coast. East winds 25 knots with 10-foot seas, and east 25 for the Barren Islands and Kamishak Bay. Cook Inlet, northeast breeze 15 to 20 knots, strongest south of the Forelands with 3-foot seas. Prince William Sound, northeast 15 knots, seas 3 feet. Kodiak Island, south to east winds 15 knots, so 3 to 5-foot seas. And for the Alaska Peninsula from Sitkinak to Cape Sarachev, southeasterlies at 20 knots. And the Bering Sea side of the peninsula, east 15, Bristol Bay, east winds 20 knots with 4-foot seas. Small craft advisory, southwesterlies 25 knots for the Alaska Peninsula with seas around 10 feet. And easterlies at 25 for Bristol Bay with 4-foot seas. Shelikof Strait, northeast at 25 knots. Otherwise, the east side of Kodiak looking at easterly winds on Sunday at 20 knots with seas at about 8 feet. For the Unalaska Island area, northeast 15 to 20 knots. Unmak Island, northerlies at 20 knots, as well as Adakanatka and Amchitka Islands, looking at north winds at 20 knots. Northwest 15 for Kiskishimi and Attu. And then for Sunday, western Aleutians from Kiska to Shemya, north 15, Amchitka Island, northwest 20, and then small craft advisories for Adak and Atka, northwest 25 to 30 knots, and the Fox Islands, west winds 30 knots, seas 13 to 16 feet. Southwest coast, south of Nunivak Island, east winds 20 knots. Pribilof's not too bad, northeast of 10, pretty light, seas down to 3 feet or so. And St. Matthew Island, east winds 15 knots, and that's east winds 15 knots also for the Yukon Delta coast, and St. Lawrence Island. Small craft advisory, or brisk wind advisory, St. Lawrence Island on Sunday, northeast 25 and east 20 for the Yukon Delta coast. Small craft advisories, Kuskokwim Delta coastline, east 25. Gale warnings for St. Matthew Island, north winds 35 knots, and the Pribilof's west at 20. And up along the eastern Beaufort Sea coast, winds on the light side, 10 knots from the east-southeast. East winds at 10 knots on the central coast. And for the western Arctic coast, around the Cape Lisburn area all the way down to Wales, look for south winds only at 10 knots. And 15 knots out of the northeast from Wales to Cape Thompson, and then 5-knot winds there, varying directions for the western and central Arctic coast, and west winds at 10 knots for the eastern Beaufort Sea coast. And moving on to tonight again, high pressure over the interior, and clouds and whatever showers are remaining will continue to end from east to west. Lingering snow showers over the eastern Alaska range, but nothing heavy. Chance of light snow, fog possibly along the mostly the Arctic coast there down into the eastern Brooks Range or eastern North Slope. Otherwise fair light winds over the interior. Rain and snow showers across the Panhandle, and occasional light rain at times over the Alaska Peninsula and the central and eastern Aleutians. For Saturday, mostly sunny interior Alaska, a little more clouds there from the eastern Brooks Range to the Arctic coast with a risk of some snow showers. And the Panhandle, cloudy, mostly cloudy with a chance of showers and chance of rain Kodiak Island late in the day. Better chance of rain though for the Alaska Peninsula, especially on the Pacific side. Scattered rain and snow showers for the Pribilofs, and not too bad for the western Aleutians. And then for Sunday, high pressure centered over the north slope there, but keeps the northern half of the state basically cloud-free or variably cloudy and mostly sunny, unsettled across southern Alaska. That's all I've got time for.
These forecasts are for planning purposes only. Call 1-800-WX-BRIEF for a formal pre-flight briefing. Always file a flight plan before you go flying. The U.S. Coast Guard Auxiliary urges you to leave a float plan with a friend or the harbor master before you go boating.